Some of my first meetings with C-suite, it was to go in and kind of explain what I'm doing in ways where you don't say things like content marketing. You just say, you don't even say storytelling, you say communicating and things like that.
Right.
You have to use their language. These are senior people who, they don't need to get into the detail, they just need they need trust, basically. They need trust in you that you're going to deliver for them. And then probably just an iterative process is as you're progressing to actually kind of feed back to them in a way that's meaningful, maybe one-to-one as well. It's about investing that time and getting that consent and then showing the rewards.
Each piece of content does have a KPI, whether it's soft or hard. It might not move the needle, but it can be, to your point, to talk about something, to explain something or enable, and so long as it's the customer of an individual piece of content can just as easily be your CMO as it is your end user,
Again, without being boring about the audience piece, comes back to, as content marketeers, is encouraging our teams to talk to the end audience, not rely on, in EY, we have relied on a lot of our technical professionals to almost give us the insight, but then increasingly we are now going out for our own first-hand conversations and listening to our customers as well, and asking them those questions that our technical guys probably wouldn't be that comfortable asking. And then we've got a really, really robust, valid conversation to then have with our senior stakeholders and our global exec, because they're becoming the voice of the customer, and nobody can argue with that.
You were saying aligning with stakeholders internally, and I it's kind of one of my passion points here, is that a documented content strategy is only as good as if it's being used. And there's obviously a temptation. You might have got permission from your manager you've got your little content strategy to operate in a silo. So therefore, you think you're doing okay, you're covered, and you run it out. But in big organisations, if you don't have alignment at every single level, what will happen is it'll just die a little death. It'll just disappear. You'll have a little puff of smoke. So you align and collaborate as much as possible and get consensual buy-in all the way across. It's hard work, but once you've done it, at least you will have content that actually gets used. So you'll have a strategy that is fit for purpose.
The other thing about content that we haven't quite touched on is the way that we can use it to maximize touch points. LinkedIn, I think it was, said you need 12 encounters with a brand before you start reaching for them instinctually, And content done well is a really lovely way of doing that, because it's very natural. If it's done editorially and engagingly, it's something that people already feel trusted with, and if you're enabling people and building share of voice in the conversation as well, it's providing use to you and to them. It's a proper win-win, which is all too rare. But I think the wise commissioning head is the one most important person in the room there, to say, okay, well, yes, this is pretty, but what's it doing? Or yes, this is doing something, but is it pretty? That's where the skill is, I think.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how tech solutions impact our ability to get towards that, as you call it, the infinite permutations of content. So you've got a content engineer. I'd love to hear more about that, frankly. But the Trump election campaign, I think, did see not quite infinite permutations, but an awful lot of permutations, and they utilised a sort of combination of artificial intelligence and human editorial input to get there. And I think, frankly, they are streets ahead of any brand that I've seen in how they're behaving. So there's a lot more, I think, that can be done to try and, I don't know, shave off the edges of your square peg, if I'm not making a metaphor sort of too opaque. But I think there's going to be a lot of development in that kind of personalization space around the content that we're making, where it's not only, well, how do I sort of take a core asset and atomize that so it's appropriate for different channels, but how do I then take that, atomize it so it's appropriate for different channels, different people within those channels at different times in their sort of daily use of those channels and so on, and that's an almost impossible manual process to go through. So I think as the tech evolves, that will help us all a lot.
Journalistic or editorial content is tested in such a hardcore crucible. With the cover of a magazine, you've got 3 seconds to sell it, and that's it. And you know enough about your end user to say, okay, well, this person will reasonably be interested in X, Y, and Z, and we can talk to them in the simplistic way. If you look at the structure of a magazine or a newspaper, you've got your short news in brief. right down to the really long features and the long reads and so on. And I think that approach with content is key, absolutely key, because you're providing things that link your products to the relevance and the way that they can empower people and change their lives, whether at work or at home. That's the job of content, is to kind of offer context for the product or the solution that you're offering, whether it's a...
Yes, but context based on behaviour, device, time, everything. And
Yeah.
the word you use is one of my other favourite words, which is atomised. Or, as atomised content which is stripped back right to its barest element. And what we're seeing now is that content marketing has raced ahead, and now the less fashionable division of content strategy is now coming to the fore in order to unlock the potential of content marketing. What does that big mouthful mean? Which is basically, to your point, you've got a white paper, you've got a title, you've got a subhead, you've got an author, and you've got body copy, and you've got an image. You tag that all up and structure up atomized. For desktop, you might not want the subhead or the you can tell what a white paper is without a name for an author. But
what I'm saying is it's not about white papers. I'm divorcing slightly from that. The white paper serves a specific function, but there are many other routes to that same message that don't involve a white paper. The white paper will be selling something, but you can sell that same story or that same need, or you can talk about it in a tweet or in an Instagram or in a, there's more than one spears to catch that fish,
Yes, but the elements of the content you create can be repurposed enormously if you create it once and then publish everywhere. And that's what we're absolutely struggling to do right now, because we just don't have those processes in place.
Talking about journalism, when you talk to people like the FT, the way that their approach towards content optimization on the site, they virtually have analysts sitting with the journalist, constantly saying, we need to refine this headline, we need to refine the structure. So the ambition of algorithmically optimizing content in real time from a journalistic point of view is really where they want to head to. And I think that's probably what you're talking more around, because it's almost like, the old days of DM. If you change the font size of the phone number and put it in the right-hand side, you have an increased rate of X of call numbers. We're trying to achieve that at mass scale personalization. And I think that thereby is the challenge.